Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of From Adversity to Awakening, transforming your hardships into greater spiritual connection and joy. I'm your host, of course, and I'm Peggy O'Neill. And I'm so glad that you're here today, especially to be with my very wonderful guest named Darren Starwynn. And I know Darren because he's been guiding me through the art and science of quantum healing. And Darren's been on the path of awakening for many decades and is quite a bright light. And I will, hi, Darren.
Hi there, Peggy, and everybody
Yeah,
else who's watching us. Good to be
yeah,
on here with you.
yeah. So nice to be here with
And it
you.
was it was really great meeting you last week at that retreat. I loved it.
Yeah, we got to meet in person. We'd been doing Zoom calls, and then we got to actually be with together. And Darren and I made a skit on one of our superpowers, and it was
That's
really
right.
fun to do together. Anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Darren. He is a quantum catalyst who helps people to awaken their consciousness and superpowers so they can make their most valuable contribution and thrive. He's dedicated to creating consciousness raising and heart opening gatherings for meditators and light workers. And I just attended one of those events and it was awesome. Darren's written 4 groundbreaking books, including bestseller Awakening the Avatar Within. He's led hundreds of workshops and trainings internationally and invented vibrational medical devices that have been sold worldwide since 1990. Darren has over 30 years experience in acupuncture, Chinese medicine, energy medicine, and spiritual healing. He has mentored and inspired thousands of healthcare practitioners, business owners, healers, and meditators to embody quantum principles of healing, leadership, spirituality, and financial success. Yay, Darren!
Good
Director,
stuff.
yeah, really good. Director of Bridge to Mastery Consciousness Institute. Darren also serves as lead minister of Lightworker Ministry. Darren loves hiking, writing, and creative original music, and he played the guitar and sang for us many times at the retreat, and we all were very uplifted by that. He lives in Fairfax, California, and can be reached through his website, drstarwyn.com. And you'll see that printed somewhere along with promotional materials or maybe even on the screen. Okay, so there we go, Darren.
Yeah,
You are a powerhouse of light worker leadership. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm really excited to talk to you about it. Since you've
Yeah,
really had an experience of this, you're not just interviewing me as like a something you're just hearing about.
exactly, exactly. So I want to ask you first about, I know from what you shared with us, Darren's very personable in his teaching and has shared with us several stories, but I want to ask you to share with our audience some of the sort of the depth of adversity that you've been through and how you saw it through.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I
Or no,
believe.
first I want to ask you about the adversity and how it impacted you. Like, did it knock you down? What happened? Yeah.
Yeah, well, the way the adversity that I experienced that was the most heavy duty for me is what I would just say is maybe ancestral adversity. In other words,
Mhm.
I come from a Jewish family, and
Mhm.
my parents were very aware that my grandparents were refugees coming from Eastern Europe to get away from Hitler and get away from when one came earlier before that. And I have a picture that shows 40 of my relatives in a small town in Poland, and I was learned that only two of the people, or two or three of the people in that picture, survived. Everyone else was massacred in the concentration camps. So, what the adversity I felt is that, as a very sensitive soul, I
Mhm.
really feel like I, in some way, took on this agony of this Holocaust and all this death and destruction into
Mhm.
my own little childlike body
Mhm.
because of, I guess maybe I believed I was supposed to do it, or my parents just especially my mother and my grandfather, really wanted. They probably was not very conscious, but somehow they transferred this to me. So I grew up feeling so burdened and so down and
Mhm.
fearful, and I almost felt like I was in at Nazi Germany,
Like
even though I
like fearing for your death, like fearing for your, yeah, that you would die.
I wasn't so much worried about physically dying, but it's just this real emotional heaviness that I could not explain because my
Mhm.
life was physically was pretty nice. I mean, I had parents that were kind to me and whatever quirks they had, they didn't beat me or abuse me. And it was more internal. Like what I've gone
Uh-huh.
through has been more on a mental level. And
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
I have other relatives that have had mental illness or died of Alzheimer's and died of heart disease and many things like this. So I felt like I had the seeds of some of those things. And at a young age, I really need to work on clearing this stuff. Like, and I
Hmm.
felt
Hmm.
very motivated when I was a teenager to start searching for ways to lighten up these very heavy burden I was feeling in my emotions and in my feelings. And that's
So
what made me look into spirituality.
yeah, so it seems like for no real reason, you had this sort of dark cloud and heavy heart, and its impact on you was that it helped you to it awakened the desire in you to have your birthright, which is happiness.
Hmm. It did. I was just always aware that that was a possibility.
Mhm.
And one thing that's beautiful is when I was growing up, even in the midst of those downer experiences, I was always aware of something that seemed limitless, like some kind of field of something, and I could never name what it was, but something that gave me hope and made me feel much like I'm going to make it through this because I'm part of this huge field of something. Now I call it the quantum field. I didn't have any name for it back at that time. So that was a very helpful part of the journey.
So not only did you have an understanding that you had a right and could be happy, you also had a connection to the quantum field.
Yes.
And how did you experience a quantum field when you were a teenager?
I
Like
feel,
some people
yes,
might not know what that is. So
yeah,
why don't you describe that a little bit?
right. That's a good thing to describe.
Yeah.
I guess it's a sense of okayness, like there's a sense that no matter what's going on, I just
Uh-huh.
know things are okay and that I'm connected to something bigger than myself. It always felt that way. And I remember when I was actually maybe a preteen, I used to actually fantasize about sending my energy out to different parts of the planet to heal different crises that were going on. It just was like it was the way that people imagine in different ways. And young, that's one of my ways of imagining. Like I just be meditating and sending out beams of light to different places. And no one around me ever talked about stuff like that. So
So not only did you have a heavy burden, but you also had a big understanding about the light and about how to transmit and how you could impact other people just through your vibration.
yeah, I'll tell you one time when it turned out to be very humiliating was that when I first year I went to college at University of Colorado in Boulder, and I was a freshman. Somebody gave me some LSD. I remember I took a big dose of I didn't, know much about it, and I went through a lot of strange experiences. But later in the night, I was up in my room looking out the window, and I was fully expecting a group of people to show up who I was going to give these spiritual teachings to, and I was just there, like ready to deliver these spirit. And then nobody, of course, nobody actually showed up. And the next day, I felt like totally like sick and depressed, and it's like,
Hmm.
but it's like somehow some part of me it was tuned into that. Like felt like that
Yeah.
was part of my purpose was to share these kind of things. It
Yeah, I
wasn't going to
mean,
happen through
people
drug
did
trips, but
people did show up. It just wasn't for a couple of
yeah,
decades.
it just took a few decades later. That's right. Yeah,
So I think that's awesome that you had a vision. I mean, I had a similar experience
yeah,
when I was 17 with LSD and seeing the oneness of all things. And yeah, it took a couple decades to start to sort of bring it home, right?
yeah. Better
So
late than never.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Well, and also I think for you and for me, I know for myself, you can say if it's true for you. It was like that experience was like it provided signposts along the way. Like
mhm.
go in this direction, don't go in that direction, go in this direction. Yeah, because in my vision, I experienced that I could have a state of under experiencing everything as one in this lifetime. So a lot of my choices were based on that information.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you were inspired to lighten up. So then what happened?
Well, what happened is that I knew I needed somebody to guide me, to mentor me in
Mm,
opening up to the spirituality. And there
right.
wasn't anybody around me in my university or in my family. So what happened is in the summer of 1971, when I was 19 years old, I was living in Boulder, and I heard about this teenage guru who was coming from India to our university to give a talk. And so I went to see him, and I had a really interesting experience. He was this short 13-year-old kind of pudgy kid. His
Hmm.
voice was sort of cracking a little bit with adolescence. And yet when he spoke, I felt something. I felt like some kind of recognition or connection, like I was supposed to work with this young man. He
Yeah.
was 13 and I was 19. So we're both teenagers. He was even younger than me. And so I went down to Denver the next day, Denver, Colorado, and hung around in this place where his students were hanging around. And after a long day, eventually late at night, one of his facilitators gave me this initiation that he called receiving knowledge. Like I received the direct infusion of this knowledge of God, and then I was taught to start meditating on it. So that really changed my life a lot. And I started being part of a community of other people who were in this group and who were meditating together and doing service projects.
Nice.
So it kind of, became very
Yeah.
involved with that, though that was
Yeah.
frustrating for me at first because I didn't feel anything. I tried to meditate and I just felt my crazy wild mind and so distracted, and then but what happened is little by little I started learning to meditate. I started learning to feel something inside myself. It took a
Mm.
while, and I
And what
learned
it,
how to cooperate with other groups of people and have some discipline, the thing, something that I really needed. So that was a good period in that way.
so then how did that impact your spiritual awakening from meditating?
Yeah, good question. I feel like I had a lot of growing up to do. Like there was a lot of aspects of my emotions and my
Mhm.
that I had to kind of really work through some of my own shadow self, some of my own like so a lot of it was just having to do some excavation of my own inner emotional baggage for quite a
Mhm.
while and work with
Uh-huh.
that.
Uh-huh.
And I think, that I think of awakening. I think maybe it took another decade or two, like till I was in my 50s, when I had some much more major awakenings to do more of what I'm doing now and to actually
Hmm.
come out as
Of
a
course.
quantum catalyst and really
Uh-huh.
bring through these higher
Yeah.
transmissions. So it was a long, patient process really to get to this point.
Beautiful. I love it. So your ancestral sort of uh infusion of darkness and boredom and difficulty inspired you to do the meditation to seek someone who could give you some support,
Yeah.
and you had a knowing that the spiritual path would probably be helpful for this. So I think that's pretty amazing. How did you know that?
See, Peggy, I really believe that I've been divinely guided in my lifetime and
Uh-huh,
also
uh-huh,
divinely protected. I
uh-huh.
can't tell you how much, whether it's a guardian angel or my higher self, I don't know what it is, but I've had so many close calls with either death, being going to prison,
Wow.
getting being assaulted, or I mean, so many things, and falling off cliffs in the middle of the night, and things with cars, and each time there's been like almost a miraculous thing that protected me throughout my whole life. And even in my businesses, I've noticed that
Yeah.
I've had times where things were looking really, really bad, and I went through a bankruptcy at one point, and then things would just keep switching back into a positive mode. So I've always felt like there's this very benevolent, positive energy watching out for me and
Mm-hmm.
guiding me. So I feel like each
Uh-huh.
step of the way, it's more like I get out of my own way with my own thoughts and doubts and beliefs. And then I think, yes, I think I'm supposed to do this.
Well, yeah, I think it's so beautiful that you knew the spiritual path would help you lighten up, whatever that means,
Yeah.
emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, whatever, right? And I think it's amazing that you knew to continue to meditate and hang out with this group and do service. And I think it's amazing that you knew that you needed to do the excavation of your ego self and deal with all of that mishigash, I call it, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing to me that you just intuited each step, and that is such an incredible gift. And I hope that us talking about this will help and people attune to messages that might be coming to them along the same lines, because it's not like somebody's going to call you up on the phone necessarily or show up at your door. That you have to like use your heart and follow that heart, or follow what you know is going to help you. And that's so much what you did. So great.
Yeah, and for people who are listening to this podcast, I'd like to share something about that, and that is that I believe you're already getting these messages of higher guidance,
Mm,
but you may
mm,
not be trusting them. You may not be paying attention to them, because that's the
mm.
way it was for me. I would get like thoughts would pop in my mind. I go, oh, it's just my thoughts, or that's just this, that's just that. I wasn't really honoring them or paying attention. And then finally, I think I realized that what if I actually did listen to those voices and follow them? And as I did it, really good things would happen. And that built trust in me that I actually am being guided. So I'll bet that's also true for you. It's sometimes we're brought up in such a way that I call it domestication, like we do with farm animals or dogs. We domesticate them so they'll just please their human owners. Like I believe we've been domesticated so that we could be controlled and manipulated by factors in our society. So you have to kind of break free of that. You have to come to a point where you say, I'm done with this. I'm going to be a sovereign and wake up and really
Beautiful.
trust my own inner voice, not just all the stuff I get from media and external fear-based messages I'm getting. And then life gets a whole lot better.
Yeah,
So
so
that's,
so that's amazing. And that was going to be my next question, but it sounds like you're following those steps. One of the huge benefits that you got was sovereignty, to be able to um, know what was best for you and to act on that, and then not be seeking outside sources and not be following the trance of the culture and all that. So tell us more, Darren, if you would. How did that growing sense of inner goodness, of trusting, of knowing that you were in a benevolent world, how did those things, which I would all call those the byproduct of having a greater spiritual connection, how did they impact your life?
wow, that's a great question. Well, I feel like what happened is that I always felt like I had a destiny, even when I was much younger, to be a master healer or teacher or something like that. Like maybe I did it in other lifetimes. I just felt like I just knew that that was there, but I felt so many blockages and difficulties, and mostly in my own mind, and things just didn't flow the way I would have liked. So I think what happened is as I brought in more light and more trust, is that more things actually did start manifesting. Like in other words, people did show up and I was able to offer them healing, and many of them had just remarkable experiences that made them want to tell other people about it. And I feel it's been a progression of literally lightening up. Like the more I lighten up from my old inner baggage from my ancestors and from when I was growing up, the more I think I'm just become more magnetic. And like even like this week, two or three people just reached out and wanted to have consults and find out how they could work with me. And the more of that is happening. And not only that, but I call it my transmission. Like transmission, I think each of us has a way that the divine source energy sort of sings and flows through you that's different than anybody else.
Mhm.
And that's the greatest thing in life, is to get in touch with that and recognize that and generously share our transmission, which I know you've been doing. I saw you do it so much when we were together at the retreat, which I really appreciate.
I
And when
was
you do
just
that,
thinking that.
magic happens. Magic happens. And
Amazing magic happens. And here we are. And I was thinking that not only I had that, but so many of the people
yes,
that were in the circle there had that happen. And some people were not as, let's say, they haven't been on the path as long as I have. So transmission was happening at a variety of levels of people's, um, let's call that spiritual connection. So I hear you say you got sovereignty, you got lightened up, you became a magnet, you had more trust in life was happening
yeah,
for you, and all sorts of good things happened. I mean, that's amazing. And so did you feel happy, Darren?
I do.
Good.
And great, I'm happy and grateful. And I'll admit that like new challenges keep coming up. It's because this thing like, on this path, it's like you gain more light, gain more confidence. And then life brings you something more to grow from. Okay, now here's the next level of it.
Right.
And so it's not like I'm just sitting back going, okay, I have it made in the shade now.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's not like it's all, yeah.
Joseph Campbell came up with this whole story called the hero's journey, that which many people have heard about, where there's these different steps that you go through as you claim your power and sovereignty. And some of those steps involve receiving help from magical helpers, like different blessings come to you. And other times it's facing your most deepest fear and having to go past that, using all those tools and blessings you got. And then as you continue on the path, you have to use what you learn. Like it's literally like in the Lord of the Rings, let's say, when the elves gave Frodo like these extra little gifts, like the little thing that lights up in the dark, and like he had to really use all those gifts in order to succeed at his mission. And
Yeah,
that's the way it is with all of us.
Harry Potter too.
Yeah, and Harry Potter too.
Yeah, and in the hero's journey, the guy gets the treasure, but then he brings it back to the community, which is his transmission.
Yes,
So,
that's
and
exactly right.
I see that happening in you and in your life so much. So, are there any tips that you would offer to people who are uh stuck, struggling with adversity, who
Mm.
have been knocked down by the hard knocks of life?
Yes, there are.
Would you like to share them with us?
Yes, yes.
Great.
Yeah. So if you've been felt knocked down by life or frustrated or heavied out by what's going on, or have a lot of anxiety or fear, or just feel like you just kind of even if you're not having all that stuff, you might be a doctor or a healthcare practitioner who feels like you've just kind of hit a plateau in your abilities, and it just doesn't inspire you as much anymore as it used to, and you're wondering, well, what's next? There's all these different ways of looking at it. But the first thing to do is to radically accept your experience. Like just say, I accept it for value. Whatever I'm experiencing is the perfect place for me to be. And when I accept it, then I can actually move forward. If I keep resisting it and just feeling bad about myself and judging myself, that just makes me go around in circles. So the first thing is just stop. I'm here. I'm feeling this. And if you just say, whatever this uncomfortable feeling is, where is it in my body? This is a very powerful spiritual
Very,
alchemy.
yes.
Because if you may feel some general sense of anxiety or malaise, but there's always going to be a place in your body where that's most focused. So let's
Yes.
say if you say, okay, it's in my heart, or it's in my belly, or it's in my shoulder, you put your hand over that area, and just really like send love. You can consciously choose to
Mhm.
send love into that epicenter of your feelings
Yes.
without judgment, and just kind of be with yourself, which is very unusual. We're not trained to be this way. We're trained to always try
No.
to fix it, to self-medicate, to try to rationalize it, to defend, to project it onto others.
To
Like
make
let
the discomfort go away as quickly as possible.
instead, like, welcome it. Like here's this is a guest that's come here for a reason.
Right.
What can I learn from this experience?
Very
And then
good.
there's some very simple practices. Like I have this book called Awakening the Avatar Within, and these practices are there's so in the beginning there's practice you can do in 30 seconds that can
Yeah, they're great.
radically shift your state of mind into a much more positive. I call them foundational practices, and I'll share a little bit right now.
Great, great.
Is that whatever you're feeling, you first radically accept it, put your hand over that area, and then do a clearing. And the way I like to do a clearing of the energy is just say, I now command a purity blast. And just imagine a big rush of white or golden light streaming through my room and through my body. And I tell you, it works. Like if you say that with confidence, it actually happens and you just feel a little lighter and more present. The next step would be to call all the energy that you projected onto other people, that you've been blaming them or feeling angry at them or hurt by them, or just say, I call all that energy back into my own body now as a sovereign. And that's a big step that many people
Big.
don't ever do.
Mm.
Pull it back from, social medias, and pull it back from, the news and all these, and the Super Bowl, whatever it is, just call it, I'm taking all that energy back into my body. And then connect to the earth so you're grounded. And then you can just choose to be vibrating with love. Not love for a certain person, just simply the state of love itself. And those steps are so powerful. And like I just feel very different right now, just from even saying those a few
I do
minutes.
too. I do too, because I'm
Yeah,
doing along them with you because you review them with us so often in our course.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So if you people are listening to this, I hope there's some benefit or some inspiration from this. And if you want to learn more, I would recommend that book
Mm.
because this
Yeah, it's a
book
great book.
has it all in here. I mean, basically the meditation practices, a lot about science, a lot about what's going on the planet and how we can make a difference, and also your own inner journey. Like think like a roadmap for you to have the inner journey to live is what I call an avatar, which just means you come to know who you are, and who you really are is an aspect of the divine in
Yes.
physical manifestation. That's an avatar, along with being, a father, mother, brother, dog, catcher,
Right.
whatever it is. But
Right.
you're
Right.
also that. So
Right.
yeah,
And that's what I call awakening. And that's what this podcast is about. It help people not only have a more functional life without so much burden and darkness, but also to open up to all that life has for them. And these parts of life have been a little bit um, not so well advertised, let's say, right?
yeah.
We didn't grow up in school having them say, guess what? You could be an avatar when you grow up. So
Peggy,
anyway,
when we
yeah,
were at the retreat together, at one point, you shared with me some of the great difficulties you've been through in your life.
yeah.
And I really appreciate that you shared that with me. And it was
Mm,
very touching.
mm.
And I can see how, in spite of those adversities you've been through, how you become such a remarkable person and who's so much empowerment and light, and you touch so many people and you're on your path. So I just want to give you a lot of acknowledgement for what you've been through and how what you are creating.
Thank you so much. I'm hoping that this podcast will help to make my transmission more in 3D so that it can spread to really broad amount of people and help people understand that um I was down to the suicidal level twice in my life, and I used my understanding about what was possible, that my birthright was happiness, that hope, and also the teachings, really in strong teachings like what you're sharing and what my teachers have shared with me to help me to excavate my true nature. And now that I know that I am an expression of the divine, there isn't anything that makes me better or worse or less than other people. And living in that place is heaven on earth.
Yes, it is.
Yes. All right. So, anything else? Wrap up? Anything else you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yes, there always is something else.
Okay.
And this is a piece of true magic that I want to share with you. And that
Mm,
is that, many people want to travel to special places that are considered like power vortex areas where you can, like holy areas or special places like, Machu Picchu, or going into the Himalayan mountains, or there's like Sedona, Arizona, like places like this. I want
power
you to know
spots.
that what,
Power spots.
yeah, power spots. What I want to share with you is that your everyday life, like the home you live in, the people that you are around or not around, is the ultimate power spot you could ever have if
Mm,
you radically accept it.
yes.
Like literally, you could say that God or the divine, the whole, whatever name you'd like to say, the Christ consciousness, the goddess consciousness that I believe in, it's totally with me 24/7 in my everyday life, teaching me, reflecting to me. And so when you have experiences with people that are either pleasant or unpleasant, it's really not that person. It's really the divine talking to you and showing you things about yourself and showing you ways that you could perhaps evolve more, or be more loving, or um, break away from some old habit that's been holding you back. So that's the attitude I take, and it makes my everyday life magical. Like, I mean, I've had some difficult experiences in that magic, but I'm accepting it all for value and saying, this is the divine talking to me directly, and I'm honored and I'm listening, and I'm going to try to obey as well as I can. So
I
that's what I
love
like to share, is that find the magic in your everyday life. You don't have to go off to some special place.
that is so beautiful and such uh important message that the thing that we seek is here right now.
Yes.
And accepting what is, as you said, is a very big first step. We
Yes, it
just
is.
accept what's here in the moment. And in the teaching that I get from Diamond Heart, the question is, the inquiry we do practice is inquiry, and the question is, what's the truth of my experience now? And that always brings me and my fellow inquirers to a portal where I experience a dimension of my essential nature. And it is quite different from that, what I knew when I was a child. And it's, for me, knowing that part of myself has totally changed my life. And I'm glad that you were beneficiary of that transformation and enjoyed that. And as I teach my students, when they receive a beautiful compliment, to say, not just thank you, but thank you for noticing, which means I agree.
Yes.
Yes. Well, okay, Darren, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Peggy, for taking the time
Yeah.
and inviting me.
Yeah, this has been an amazing encapsulation of so much of what this walking towards the awakening is all about, from the ground place of adversity. So I want to thank you for your wisdom, for your transmission, for your sharing, your generosity, and your time.
And if
Beautiful.
anyone wishes to reach me for any
Yes,
purpose, it'd
yes,
be at my website is www.dr, which is short for doctor, then Starwynn, STARWYNN.com. So
yes,
www.drstarwynn.com. And you can find out about the things that I offer in the classes, and there's some that are free and some that are they're paid professional. It's all there, and we actually have events on Zoom every week that are free of charge for people,
yes,
light worker gatherings that are very beautiful that you'd be
yes,
welcome to be part of. Join the
yes.
community.
And I came to know you from those, so I highly recommend them. Well, anyway,
Okay.
fare
Yes.
thee well to all, and be in the moment. See your true self in that moment, and carry on. Thank you again, Darren.
Okay. Thank you, Thanga. Bye bye, everybody. Bye, Peggy.